Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to May 3rd, 1921, and the rugged hills of County Mayo, where a dramatic and deadly ambush unfolded near the village of Tourmakeady. It was here that the South Mayo Brigade of the Irish Republican Army struck against Crown forces in one of the most coordinated and determined guerrilla actions of the Irish War of Independence. The Irish War of Independence, which began in January 1919, had by 1921 evolved into a brutal and fast-moving guerrilla conflict. The IRA, under increasing pressure from the British forces, had abandoned large-scale confrontations in favour of smaller, mobile units known as flying columns. These highly trained groups of volunteers operated in rural terrain, using surprise attacks, ambushes, and swift retreats to harass and demoralize British forces. By the spring of 1921, the war had entered one of its most intense and bloody phases. The South Mayo Flying Column, led by Commandant Tom Maguire, was part of this new wave of guerrilla units. Maguire, a native of Cross, County Mayo, was a young but formidable leader who had risen quickly through the ranks. He commanded a tight-knit group of men, familiar with the mountains and bogs of Mayo, a critical advantage in the kind of hit-and-run warfare that had come to define the conflict. On the morning of May 3rd, Maguire and his men lay in wait on the road between Ballinrobe and Tourmakeady. Intelligence had indicated that a patrol of the Royal Irish Constabulary, bolstered by members of the notorious Black and Tans, would be travelling through the area. The column had carefully selected a spot where the road wound between forested hills. Perfect terrain for an ambush. As the convoy of lorries and bicycles approached, the IRA opened fire with devastating precision. The lead RIC men were hit almost immediately, and chaos erupted among the British ranks. Gunfire echoed through the woods as the IRA pressed their advantage. Among the British dead was District Inspector William Lambert, a senior RIC officer and a significant target for the IRA in the region. The engagement lasted for several hours, with the IRA using their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver and inflict significant casualties on the Crown forces. However, the cost to the IRA was also high. Several volunteers were killed or wounded, including Michael O'Brien, a young volunteer who died while providing covering fire for his comrades' withdrawal. As the British brought in reinforcements, including troops from the Border Regiment, the flying column was forced to scatter into the surrounding hills and forests. What followed was a brutal manhunt. British forces retaliated with widespread raids, arrests, and house burnings in the Tourmakeady area, a tactic commonly used in reprisal for IRA attacks. Civilians bore the brunt of this vengeance, further fueling resentment and support for the Republican cause. Though the ambush itself was a tactical success for the IRA, it came with a high human cost, a stark reminder of the toll the war was taking on communities across Ireland. The Tourmakeady ambush stands out not just for its ferocity, but for what it revealed about the evolving nature of the war. It showed that the IRA, particularly in rural areas like South Mayo, had become highly organized, deeply embedded in the local population, and increasingly capable of striking hard at British forces. The ability to coordinate such a well-planned operation, inflict casualties, and then melt away into the landscape was emblematic of how the IRA was turning the tide of the conflict. Just 2 months after the ambush, a truce was declared in July 1921, bringing a temporary halt to the hostilities. But for those who fought at Tourmakeady on both sides, the war's wounds would linger long after the guns had fallen silent. Tom Maguire survived the ambush and later opposed the Anglo-Irish Treaty, remaining a staunch Republican for the rest of his life. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go foil.